Hey guys, welcome back to another video from Hoops Empire. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the current situation for the Boston Celtics and where they can go from here as we enter into free agency. Before we start, make sure to subscribe down below, turn on notifications, and like the video. Once Brad Stevens took over for longtime GM Danny Ainge, it was clear he had a different outlook on this team, a more immediate one. Within just weeks of being hired as the president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens traded Kemba Walker to the OKC Thunder for Al Horford and Moses Brown. It was a great move, bringing back an impactful, seasoned veteran that knows the system. And clearly, Brad values the best ability over all others: availability. Kemba was a bit of a saving face signing, as I was weary of the fit from the start. Another small guard that is not a great playmaker and is largely just a shot creator. The plan of attack should have been to get another competent big with all that money or spend it on a deep bench. But Boston management felt the need to make it seem like losing Kyrie wasn't a big deal, but getting a lesser version of him in Kemba. No offense to Walker, of course. So bringing back Horford was great, but what about the more recent moves? First, he dealt Tristan Thompson. The logistics of the deal are still being worked out and possibly expanded. So I won't get too deep into it, as it is still largely a question mark. However, in principle, it was Thompson going out and Chris Dunn and Bruno Fernando coming back in. If it had been done before August 2nd, still in the 2020-21 cap year, Dunn could have fit into the Enes Kanter trade exception worth roughly $5 million. Having Dunn go into this trade exception means that technically we wouldn't be taking feasible salary back, so another $9.2 million trade exception would have been created for the departure of Thompson. But fret not, Celtics fans, even though the Kanter exception expired, the Celtics still have two other exceptions, one from Daniel Theis and one from Kemba Walker, that Chris Dunn would still fit into. This would allow Boston to get a trade exception worth Tristan Thompson's 2021-22 salary of $9.7 million. However, Boston is still expanding the deal, and it is quite possible that they don't get any exception at all. They technically can take back $14 million in salary, and they could be looking to get a good player in return. So we will see. The next, and probably more significant trade, is the one that has already been pushed through, that sent Josh Richardson from the Mavericks to Boston, in return for newly acquired big Moses Brown. Boston used the rest of the Gordon Hayward trade exception, worth roughly $11 million, to acquire Richardson, and the Mavericks had no problem receiving virtually nothing back because they wanted the cap space for this free agent class. In my eyes, this deal was a no-brainer for Boston. Josh Richardson has had a rough past 2 seasons. Yes, he has probably fallen off a little bit. However, I think he can still be better and still be an impactful player in the right situation. Look at his final 2 years in Miami. He averaged 15 points and 4 assists because he was actually allowed to handle the ball, with starting talent. The last 2 seasons, he's been a purely off-ball player, and any on-ball time as a ball handler is spent with the second unit, rendering him largely unplayable because that's just not his style. He was behind Ben Simmons in his first year in Miami, and after that was behind Luka in one of the most heliocentric offenses of all time, with the Mavericks. Just bad fits. But now, in Boston, who lacks primary playmakers, he might be able to bring some of that production back. He will probably get more off the dribble shots and chances to playmake for the Jays. Even if it doesn't work out, you give up practically nothing, and Richardson is expiring. So you either free up $10 or $11 million in free agency next year, or it pans out well and he becomes a long-term rotation guy in Boston. In terms of what you're sending out in Moses Brown, I wouldn't be too worried. People get very caught up in his stats. They think they know who he is because he put up 20 and 20 and averaged 8 and 8 on the season. I was saying the same things when he got traded to Boston, but in reality, his cons vastly outweigh his pros. And he can be hard to play sometimes. Maybe he develops one day, as he is as raw gets, but for now, he wouldn't be seeing the floor in Boston, so it's not a big deal. So now we look ahead to what moves the Boston Celtics team can make as free agency is upon us. There are lots of options, whether it be low or high level, so let's break a few down. First, let's start with the big trades or signings Boston can make. This will largely be centered around sign-in trades, which, yes, would effectively hard cap the team. However, other moves can be made beforehand, with a sign-in trade to cap it off so the roster is complete. The first would be Spencer Dinwiddie coming to Boston. Personally, I'm not too sure how I feel about this deal. Dinwiddie is a great player, but I'm not sure if he's worth $20 million per year. And I'm not sure if his play style would be amazing in Boston. Yes, I know that he had a career year last time he was fully healthy, averaging 20 points and 7 assists back in the 2019-20 season. However, he has never been a very good three-point shooter. And while he is a good playmaker, who knows how he would look behind two stars in Boston, as opposed to being behind only Kyrie whenever he played in 2019. I'm sure Spencer could be great no matter where he goes, but I would prefer a much more natural playmaker in Lonzo Ball, or the next possible target, Dejounte Murray. Dejounte Murray is an amazing up-and-coming player from San Antonio. And to be honest, I'm not sure what reason the Spurs would have to give him up. However, it's being reported that he is a gettable player from the Spurs' grasp. I'm sure a deal would also be centered around Smart. However, a situation I had thought of is a possible sign-and-trade scenario involving Evan Fournier. This would allow the Celtics to get back something for Evan, who seems to be gone at this point, wanting too much money than the Celtics want to pay. Only the recipient of a signed then traded contract hard caps a team, so it's not going to hurt the Celtics at all. It gives the Spurs a go-to scorer if they lose anyone else in free agency, and allows Boston to retain a great point guard of the future. Murray is not a great shooter, but he can be and has had good seasons. Following an ACL tear, he proceeded to have back-to-back career years and is only improving. He's long, he's an exceptional defender, great finisher, has a mid-range game, he's still very young, and he's an absurdly good rebounder, averaging 7 rebounds per game at just 6'4". He's an uber athlete, and a trio of Murray, Brown, and Tatum could bring some real shine to Boston. Just a fun team. But moving on to more realistic options. The Celtics have a $5.9 million taxpayer mid-level exception that they can use. There are a boatload of targets to go after, but I'll give a few more ideal ones here. The first name I'm going to throw out is a name that has been rumored to Boston for a little while now, Patty Mills. Mills could even take a vet minimum contract. However, especially after these Olympics, where he's been going insane for the Boomers, he should get the roughly $6 million per year. He is a great shooter and a valuable bench scorer, as well as a pest on defense, using his lateral quickness and overall high energy to bother opposing offenses, even his lackluster size. Mills has also played under Udoka before, and with Udoka being a very personable coach, Mills could definitely be in the play to be signed by the Boston Celtics for that reason alone. Another name, and another former Udoka and Spurs disciple, is Rudy Gay. This past season in San Antonio, he put up 11 points and 5 rebounds per game on a super solid 38% from deep, while still being a positive defender. He could definitely give the Celtics more drastically needed front court size, with the only viable wing candidate currently on this Boston Celtics bench being Aaron Nesmith. And finally, but definitely not the last name the Celtics should chase with the mid-level exception, is Otto Porter Jr. OPJ has been rumored to Boston before. However, he was always on that terrible near maximum contract. It just wasn't worth it at all. However, now, a $6 million contract is a steal. His minutes were a bit spotty last year, but per 36, he averaged 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists on 55% true shooting, but almost 38% from deep. He could be a very solid contributor to the currently lackluster bench Boston has been sporting these last few years. Now, looking ahead to veteran minimum contracts, I'll throw out a few other names. The first of which being TJ McConnell. He has always been a guy to take lower contracts, who knows for what reason, but he's a very good player that in my opinion is even capable of starting for this team, depending on the other starters. He's a very, very good playmaker that uses his dribble drive ability to create for shooters, an ideal fit on this Boston Celtics team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. He is not a shooter at all whatsoever, but that's okay, because he more than makes up for it with his near 10 assists per 36 minutes. Another name would be Trevor Ariza. Ariza's career is probably coming to an end soon, but I think he could be a more impactful Udonis Haslem for this Boston Celtics team, to give a comparison. He can still produce on the court, and can add some real grit to any locker room, and never backs down from any sort of challenge. He can set a great example for all the young guys on the team. And finally, a name you are probably all excited to hear, Isaiah Thomas. Is he washed up? Who really knows? But it is worth a shot. Ever since he had his surgery, he has been self-advocating for an NBA return, saying he is at full strength, so why not take the chance? For starters, it's good karma for a team that has been cursed with injury, And if he can be any sort of productive bench scorer, that is a major plus. If it doesn't work out, it's hardly any money on the books and he doesn't have to take minutes and can still be a glue guy, showing players that nothing is given, only earned in this league. All Celtics fans should love to see an IT return, myself being one of them. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what free agency predictions you guys have for the Celtics. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below, turn on that notification bell, like the video, and most importantly, have a good one.